Okay, so this tutorial is going to cover the placement of a background bitmap image and also cover some of the basic curve drawing tools. So I've already gone over the Rhino interface in another tutorial and also during class, so I'm not going to go ahead and cover that too much more. I'm going to double click on the top screen here to zoom in here, and I'm going to go ahead and just zoom out here. And we're going to go ahead and start by placing the background bitmap. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. Now you can either go from the menu here, click under background bitmap, you can hit place, or if you just type and use the command line, you can see if I type back, then it'll automatically try to autofill that in. Hit enter, and we're going to go ahead and open up that interface. So now if I go to the desktop here, I can go ahead and select an image that I've gone through, and you guys are going to be using sketches to do this, so you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and drop this. We're not concerned with scale at this point because we can go ahead and do the scaling afterwards. And so I'm going to go ahead and place this. And we can start to use our snaps here. So if we wanted to start to draw shapes, you can see that that's starting to snap towards that. We can also disable that by toggling that off. We have our object snaps here. And you can see I'm toggling that on and off, but end, point, mid, intercept, and perpendicular are the ones that I prefer to have on just from the start. Okay, and so that takes us into some of the tools here. And as I'm orbiting this, I'm right-clicking to pan when I'm holding that, and then if I hold Control and right-click, it'll zoom in and out in here. Okay, if you guys have the wheel on your mouse, then you can just wheel in and out utilizing that as well. Okay. So the first thing we're gonna, the way that this builds geometry is it starts with points, then it goes to lines or curves, and then to surfaces, and then from surfaces you can build solids. Okay, so this is basically going to exercise works through some of the curve tools. So curves work in a series of degrees. If we have a polyline that's a 1-degree curve, we have a circle that's a 2-degree curve, which is then essentially based on arcs. So if we want to draw curves, we can start to build 2-degree curves that are all based on the radiuses of these curves, and you can see how that starts to fold in. And then you have 3-degree curves, which are essentially based on mathematics and weighted knots in here. So they're Bezier curves here, and I can toggle those on and off. And so you can see the weights in here, the knots can be manipulated around and shifted. Another way, if I hit escape twice, I can also turn on the actual edit points on the curve here and start to manipulate those around as well. So those are 2 ways you can start to edit those curves. Okay. As we start to get into this and start to draw, we can go ahead. The first thing we're going to look at in the assignment is this eventually is going to have to fit into a 12-inch by 12-inch module here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my grid snap so I can snap to my origin. And I'm just going to type 12, enter 12. And so that's the size of the unit here that we're going to be trying to fit to. Alright, and so you can see obviously I'm going to be drawing much larger than the actual piece. That's okay. We'll utilizing the scale tools to right here. We can scale down the drawing once we have it set up here. Okay. And that has advantages and disadvantages. If you want to pay attention to the spacing of your parts so that you don't accidentally make something too thin when you scale it down. So. Alright, and so this is essentially a drawing that is going through here, and I don't want to have my snaps on, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. I'm going to zoom in, and I can start to draw on top of this. And utilizing some of the snaps in here, I can start to really build onto this. And you can see it automatically wants to close the curve at points when I connect it. And so I can select these, and I can see them really nice and clearly. And go ahead, and I'm just going to do a couple of these, and just to give you a sense of this. Now, if you right-click once you run a command, that essentially is equivalent to the Enter button. And so what that does is that repeats the command, and you can see that here in the command line, start a polyline. That's what I've been doing. So as you guys go through this, you guys can repeat the sequences of your commands. So I click that, right-click, Enter. And so I do that. And if you at any point want to exit a command, right-clicking or pressing Enter will take you out of it. Essentially, you're communicating to the machine that you're done running that tool. So if you guys are sketching that stuff out, you can start to build that with the polyline tool. As you guys start to do curves, we can use the tool directly next to that and adjacent to it. And we can start to draw curves and set this stuff up. Now say we wanted to have this guy fit, if we click and hold on to this, we have a whole array of ways to draw tools. And so, within each one of these, some of them we can right click and left click on. So if we do, say, a right click on this, we can draw we can right click. You can select points to build through. So if we build a series of points, and then we right click on this, we can select these in order, and then it'll build a curve that goes through that. Okay? And I'm not going to confirm that. Or we can come in here and we can use the points to start to define a vector. And you can see that that's distinct because we're not actually moving that, we're using those as knots or weights instead. So we can turn on these guys, and if we select our curve edit point, we can pull that over. Our curve edit point, and start to pull that over. Okay. Now, as you guys are drawing some of the geometries, you want to make sure that you have closed loops in this. So I'm going to go ahead, using the selection tool, I'm just going to SELPT to select all the points that I just drew, and then I'm going to delete them because we don't need those. And because I have my snaps on, it's automatically going to try and snap to geometry. So I can draw as many curves as I like. I get into this. I'm drawing a weird tornado symbol here. But we can come in here, and if we type join, we can join those together. And something to note up here says these were joined into one closed curve. So that means that when we take this to the laser cutter, this will fall out of our image here. Okay? And so we can look at that, both of those methodologies as ways of drawing tools. We can also generate circles from this, and you can do that to generate arcs. Again, the rectangle tool, I use that down here. And a lot of these, whenever you hit one of these command lines, it asks you for these details in here. So we have the center of the circle here, that's what it's asking us for. And then we can start to edit some of these things, the type of circle, 2-point, if it's going to be vertical, tangent, around the curve, or fit to points. These are features or settings within the tool itself. Like if we go to start drawing a curve, we can set the degree of this. If we click on that, say I set the degree to 1, then it becomes a polyline. Okay. So likewise, if I select this, I can change the degree back to 3, and if I draw a curve with the same series of points, I just hit undo there, I can draw that. And so this is the same curve in 1 degree, this is that same set of points in 3 degrees. Okay, so you guys can start to edit and modify that. If, for example, you want to rebuild that, or you want it to be reinterpreted, we can type rebuild, and then we get some settings in here, and you can change this. It's 5 control points. And if we preview that, nope, looks like our degree is a little bit off. Oh, it's probably because we're using weights on this. So you can see the weights have different locations. So we use the weights, and we want this to be exactly that. We can literally move that into place. Right. And so this can be how you can start to modify and edit and massage a lot of the geometries around. Okay. All right, and so that's the basics of doing some of the tools. If you guys get into here, you can draw polygons. Again, we can change the number of sides to, say we want to make a 9-sided polygon, we can do that. If we right click to repeat, we can change the number of sides to 3 if we wanted to draw a triangle. Right click again, you can start to change the edges, and I encourage you guys to start to play around with this. Another thing, you can start to fill out the curves if we want to create a rounded edge, or we want to soften these geometries. Say I really like this, I can set the radius by clicking on that, and I'll set that to be something like 0.1, and then I can go ahead and you can see that that's now trimmed and joined. And say I want to increase the radius, it's a little bit more visible. I can come in here and start to really refine this. Oh, right click, repeat, right click, repeat, right click. Okay, so as you guys start to draw this, you're going to eventually get to a point where you're going to have so much going on that the background bitmap is going to get in the way. And if you want to turn that off, you can come in here under background bitmap and hide that. And then we can start to look at it and see what we're doing in here. as you want to tool this stuff together. The other way we can do this, we type background bitmap, and you can go ahead and turn it on, toggle it on and off from there as well. Okay. All right, and that should get you going.